Hey, hi, and welcome to the weekly walkthrough installment of our book study on Wayne Jacobson's He Loves Me. Ooh, yeah, yay!
Look, in all fairness, I did warn you in the last video that there could be sock puppets. Okay? Let's be honest. I did warn you. So you really can't say anything, just putting it out there. Although I'm not quite sure what species that is. It seemed to be some sort of eyeless, blind, white, worm-like creature. I mean, truth be told, I suppose I could have put eyes on them, but then I don't have any socks really worth throwing away or anything. They're all in good shape, no holes and stuff, so then you have to go to people's houses and you forget and you put the wrong pair on and they're wondering, does he know there's eyeballs on one of his socks? And that just makes the whole conversation just get really weird. Let's be honest. All right. Anyways, well, moving on from that, temporary bit of insanity. Temporary, like it goes away, right? Anyways, we are on to chapter 7 of our book. And, well, we'll get right into things. How's that sound? There's a lot of this one here I find is story about things that he's gone through, so we'll try to be concise here a little bit. Anyways, chapter 7 is, What Shall I Give to God? Seems a legit question. Anyways, the author begins by talking about, the difficulty he had trying to give away something at a yard sale, and the person refused to just take it for free and ended up, giving him 50 cents for it. And he mentions that we tend to treat God that way as well, that we realize we can't earn his love, we'll fall back to a position to try to compensate him for it. Especially if we need him to do something for us, we'll find ourselves wondering what we can give to him or give up for him that'll prove our sincerity. And inevitably, we tend to go for a worst case scenario. He mentions, like, is tithing enough? What if he wants everything I own? After all, life is more than possessions. Maybe he wants all my time, deny myself of any enjoyment or relaxation, or go to some far off land and, live in poverty the rest of his life and spread the gospel, And he, but he mentions, where does that line of thinking end with? Now he quotes Micah, the prophet from the Old Testament, and he says that the quote from Micah is, with what shall I come before the Lord? Shall I come with him before burnt offerings? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams? Shall I offer my firstborn for my transgression? So all in all, he just sort of gets, keeps going farther and farther and farther, right? And, there have been times in human history, and the author mentions it, where, human sacrifices were kind of the way that people used to seek favor for their gods that they followed. They'd offer their firstborn son or their firstborn daughter, or sacrifice them in an altar, or, splay them over a volcano, or however, right? But it still comes back to that whole, wondering if he loves you or doesn't love you kind of thing. And we get along here, and he gets into the story here about somebody that they had a volunteer in a church. And whenever they needed somebody, there they were. They needed somebody to help in the nursery, they were there. They needed somebody to help with the bake sale, it was there. They needed somebody to do this, they were there. Over and over and over again. Never said no. Always volunteered. Always jumped up, And they praised her for it, Hey, if we had, 10 more like this, we could reach the world kind of a thing. And, they praised her up for it and encouraged her and everything else. But the problem is it didn't last. The author quotes here that eventually he had left the congregation and found out later that this woman in question, had done as well. She told her story to him that a significant need in her family had caused her to finally give up doing all the ministry others had come to expect of her. Her marriage broke up, and she began to ask difficult questions about her life and God. And the people who had been blessed by her service very quickly distanced themselves from her struggle. But she had been acting like the child whose father was too busy for her, and she kept trying to find a big enough present and a big enough thing to get his attention. But no matter what she brought, it never seemed to really be enough. And question apparently she had put to him at the end of their discussion is kind of a little, I kind of feel for the guy being asked this. You were my pastor, why didn't you stop me? And apparently it took him quite off guard as well. I mean, that in his words, he mentions that she may have been the one driving the car off the road, but he'd helped fill the car with gas. And he admits he failed her, But he was one of the reasons was, of course, is he realized that he was sort of on the same course as her at the time, and he didn't realize that there was anything wrong. Anyways, moving on here. Like I said, there's a lot of storytelling in this particular chapter, so bear with us a bit. The author, Mr. Jacobsen, mentions that his experience with God came at a young age. He was very hungry for God and whatnot, but he found that he kept giving more and more to him, trying to desperately seek approval. That he would spend more time, more passion, be more willing to obey over and over and over again, which sounds great, but for the way wrong motives. And he came to start to believe that God was rewarding his behavior and his efforts rather than just, caring about him, and he says, that he was never certain that he loved and accepted him, that his gifts and sacrifice perhaps, but not me. The more I gave, the more it seemed that he wanted. But I never knew that God simply was delighted with me as his child. I think probably a lot of us can probably relate to that. It's difficult to understand that, he just loves us for us. He likes us for us, and we don't have to strive and, give everything and every waking moment and things to him. I mean, if he's asked you to, fine. But I mean, a lot of the time it's us that's doing the asking. It's us that's trying to get his approval, because we think we have to. And whether that's something that, we were taught in church, or something out of our own head or our own childhood or the way we live or whatever. But I mean, it doesn't work. It really, and the best you're going to do is like, the woman in the earlier story, you're going to burn yourself out, in the end. And you're not going to feel overly fulfilled or happy or anything. You're just going to get strung thinner and thinner and thinner. Anyways, moving on. I know I'm taking up a lot of time. I'm sorry. Anyways, he mentions the words of an Old Testament prophet, that he will take great delight in you. He will quiet you with his love. He will rejoice over you with singing. Except for fleeting moments, few and far between, I couldn't imagine that this is the way God felt about me. I mean, how could he, after all, with all the temptations that he battled? But Jesus warned us that there would be people who would prophesy and cast out demons, work miracles in his name, who he would turn away at judgment. I never knew you, away from me. If that isn't a great example of climbing the ladder that's leaning against the wrong wall, I don't know what is. I don't want to be caught in that crowd. I've never heard that saying before, but it's kind of interesting, don't you think? Anyways, moving on. The moments of insecurity would drive me to my knees in repentance and make me redouble my efforts to be more committed to God. Though I could sustain the increased burden for a few weeks or maybe even months, I never had any certainty that the things I were doing caused him to be delighted in me. Eventually, I would slide right back to where I had been before. He says, I'll never forget when all of that changed. A few years ago, through a painful betrayal and a fresh insight into God's work for us on the cross, I began to see how much my Father loved me and to understand how much delight he took in his children. This realization radically transformed my life, and it's my hope that the telling of it in the pages ahead will help transform you as well. Well, I guess that's why we're here, isn't it? God doesn't need us to serve Him as a means to attain His love or affection. He wants us to serve Him out of the love and affection He already holds for us in His heart. If you've never tasted that reality, you cannot imagine the freedom that lies ahead of you. My father brought me to the place where I realized that even if I never preached another sermon, never counseled another person, never led someone to Christ again, He would still delight in me as His child. Now, how many of us think that way? You know, that even if we never did anything else, we never did another ministry, we never did, another video, we never helped anybody, we never counseled, we never, God would still just be delighted that we were in existence, Anyways, that verse that we quoted was from Zephaniah chapter 3:17, and that was, "The Lord your God is with you. He will take great delight in you. He will quiet you with His love, and He will rejoice over you with singing." Probably something to ponder in the days ahead. Anyways, our question at the end here states that, take an honest look at the spiritual things to which you give your life. Are they rising out of your security and God's great love for you, or are they an attempt to earn His affections? Do you live trying to pay God back for His salvation or some other act of His on your behalf? It's something worthwhile pondering, and definitely something worth to consider prayerfully going forward. Anyways, this has been kind of a rough and tumble one here. I know. Some of these ones with a lot of the stories in them, I sort of have a little more trouble because you want to get as many details in, but you don't want to necessarily read 12 pages of text, take up like a half an hour of your time. And I also understand we've, decided to release this on Thursday instead of Friday. I know, throwing you right off. You got to expect the unexpected these days, boys and girls. Oh my goodness gracious, you never know what's going to come. And a lunatic could show up with sock puppets to do a book study on Wayne Jacobsen's He Loves Me. Just putting it up there. Anyways, thank you for your time. I can't promise no sock puppets next time. Can't promise there will be any. Kind of depends on the mood at the time, really, honestly. Depends on how much coffee I've had, really, I suppose. But, like I say, guys, we're all in this together. And you take care. God bless. And I will talk to you next time. All right? Cool. Peace out.